which was a Martian thing. I saw, again, remember I was young, so of course I saw a broken world and thought, geez, through meditation and yoga, we can solve everyone's, ills. And that was a drive, that was an inspiration. Of course, I learned in time that that's not quite how it works. But when it comes to astrology as well, the thing that allowed me to be successful at astrology, as far as it being a part of my vocation and being what I actually get up and do every day, it wasn't actually doing sessions with people. That was helpful. But it was when I woke up and I heard people talking about astrology, and I would see things, different courses and classes, and I would think to myself, my God, that's confusing as hell. This can be put together in a much more maybe logical fashion. This can be put together in a much more digestible fashion, which are Martian qualities. So even though a lot of people would say my channel is super boring, well, I did that on purpose because I wanted the delivery of the astrology to be as unclouded by just going off on different rants and talking about things that were irrelevant. I wanted to focus specifically on, if you're learning astrology, what would that be like to learn it very directly? And again, despite the fact that many people thought that, they said I should smile more and I should have more stories and these sorts of things, I didn't want to do that. There's plenty of people doing that. So my drive coming from this Mars in the 10th house, it was a tamasic drive. I got involved in yoga and meditation to fix the world. I got involved in astrology to, from what I understood at the time, to fix the way astrology was portrayed and the way that it was being delivered. So that Mars in my mentality is what gives it that kind of spin to it. And so it's not that I'm fighting for my career. It's that I'm trying to use that Martian logic or directness to make something more accessible or more digestible by my own, opinions, obviously. So I think it's more digestible and more direct, but other people don't particularly like learning from me. But it was that allowed those things to come about. Does that make sense? What I'm trying
It does, actually. It does. That's really fascinating. Yeah, because Mars is logic.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get into astrology because I wanted to go to conferences and talk endlessly about, all the possibilities and theories and whatnot. I don't want to get into that far out there theoretical stuff because it's theory. Maybe it will lead to something useful. And that's why when it comes to like the astrology apprenticeship programs, the focus is on, we're going to spend a whole year on the Rashis, on the Bhavas, on the planets, so that you get that down so well that when you get to the theoretical aspect of it, you can figure out what makes sense and what doesn't.
And what doesn't, absolutely. So that's a good lead-in, actually. So what are you teaching right now?
Well, I mean, right now, there's the Astrology Apprenticeship Program, which is a 4-year program, and I've got 3 years running at the same time. So year 1 of the program has started, which is focusing specifically on the Rashis, on the signs, on the energies of the signs, on how Rashi aspects work, on how to see if a sign is going to flourish or if it's going to experience annihilation. And every time someone starts to join this class, they say, oh, I know it. I've been studying astrology for so long, but you get them about 3 or 4 videos in and they're like, there is so much about this that is filling in many of the gaps that I didn't even know were there. Exactly. So the Rashis and signs, we're finishing up year 2 of we're finishing up the first class of year 2, which is specifically on Shadbala, not just looking at the total Shadbala score and seeing how to like jam that into a part of the chart, but looking at each of the balas and seeing how those apply by themselves. And then year 3, the course that we're just finishing up at the beginning of this year, is focused on Rahu and Ketu. And everyone says, well, why do you wait until year 3? That's 2 years to even talk about Rahu and Ketu. And the folks who waited, now they understand why. Because in order to understand how Rahu and Ketu works, you have to know how the whole rest of the chart works first. You can take in and say, well, Rahu's in this sign, Rahu's in that house, so therefore this. And you'll be right on a very general, broad level. People will think you know a lot of things. But if you know what the Lord of Rahu is doing with Shadbala, with the Avashtas, with the prosperity and the annihilation of the sign that it's in, and you know that first, then you can throw in or weave in the influence of Rahu and Ketu to figure out how are they going to skew that or diffuse it or amplify it. So, when it comes to the astrology apprenticeship program, there's 3 classes per year, and these are the 3 courses that are just finishing up right now. And so next is going to be the Bhavas for year 1, the Avashtas for year 2, and going to the Vargas for year 3.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And, with that prominent Mars that you have, logical, right? And I think that actually, I find it difficult to learn astrology from when there's too much like going off topic, too many, straight.
Well, some people like it, everyone is a good teacher for someone who is a teacher. So,
Yeah. I'm just talking about what I like, and probably because I have Mars.
Because your Mars is there, yeah.
Yeah. And so those are the people that you're going to attract.
Right.
And they'll appreciate that. But anyway.
Yeah.
So let me see. Now, when Mars is by itself, there's more quarreling and frustration. It can be more pushy. There's more ups and downs. Have you noticed that at all in charts? Have you seen that actually happen?
When Mars is by itself, as in like nothing influencing it, or just in a particular...
Yeah, nothing influencing it, no planets with it.
What I have found, what's interesting about Mars, Mars has sort of a bad rap in certain ways because, many times people don't like the directness of Mars, but, really successful people tend to appreciate Mars because it's like this. It comes down to, I don't know if we had this conversation in another video or not, but a friend of mine I'm going to tell a story.
Okay. Well, your stories are good. I'm talking about too much stories.
Okay.
You can't remember what the point was when you started talking.
A friend of mine was going on a vacation, and this friend of mine is a very successful type A, working 60, 80 hours a week kind of person, and they were going to take their other friend on a vacation who doesn't have a job. And they thought to themselves, well, my friend doesn't have a job, so therefore I will ask my friend to plan the itinerary so that, I can still work and get things done. We'll go on the vacation and she'll take care of the itinerary. Well, by the time the vacation came around and they got to where they were going, the woman who did not have a job hadn't done anything. And so that's one of the reasons why they say, don't give a person a job who doesn't have a job, because they're not going to know how to do what you need to do. Or they say things like, if you want to get something done, give the task to someone who's already overworked, because they need to be so direct and they need to be so on it that they're just going to get it done because they don't have time to mess around.
Right.
So, Mars has that kind of quality. When it's by itself, it tends to allow that person to appear more pushy. But really what's happening is that Mars probably has free reign to just go in there, do the task, and get out. Mm-hmm. And to people who aren't used to that, or to people who don't quite work that way, it will seem like they're being pushy or they're being difficult, when really what they're doing is they're being efficient. And sometimes that can make others uncomfortable. Does this make sense what I'm trying to say?
It does. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's like when I'm talking to other astrologers and I'm trying to get stuff done, since I have such a full schedule, I need to know, are we talking at this time? Is this what's happening? And sometimes I talk to astrologers who they're not so busy, or they're not so, I guess, into it, and they're more wishy-washy. Like, well, maybe I'll call it this time. Maybe that'll happen. And I'll say, look, no, that's not the way it works. Like, I need to know so that I can plan my day, because I've got stuff to do. And that comes across as difficult or mean, but it's not. It's just that there's only so much time in the day, and Mars understands that. And that's where Mars gets its bad press, I think. Bad
reputation. Yeah. It's gotten to the point where I actually have to make appointments for my friends now. Mm-hmm. Seriously.
Right. That's what happens when Mars drives you. Mars wants a person to be successful. And like, for example, the woman who worked 68 hours a week in that story, she had, I think she had an exalted sun. Yeah, it would be an Aries with Mars. So she is super driven, and she doesn't have time to do much of anything other than work and do one task after another. So on one level, it doesn't necessarily allow her to live her life as freely as maybe if she had a more prominent Venus and so on.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about someone getting things done and being effective, it's those kinds of people you want on your team if you've got something to do.
This is true. Now, another thing that Mars really likes to do is he likes to test his mettle.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to always be progressing and getting stronger and
Right.
better and more efficient.
Right.
Roaming to and fro with red eyes, right?
Right, yes.
Things to do, always.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say along that line?
Well, since we were talking about the idea of Mars in enlightenment, one of the reasons that Mars is so helpful for someone on an enlightenment path is it doesn't allow the person to sit idly by. It constantly drives them to become more precise, more accurate. It doesn't allow them to simply do a particular kind of devotional practice and then get so caught up in the bliss of it that they never proceed any further. They never go into deeper understanding. And if the idea of enlightenment is being knowledgeable, having knowledge, well, then Mars always wants the purest, most pristine knowledge. And this is one of the reasons why Ramana Maharshi was, I don't know whether it's true or not, but he was said to be an incarnation of Mars or an incarnation of Skanda, because his approach was direct as you can get. And that approach was on who am I, what am I? So no matter what happens, you can always come back to that sense, that meditation of who am I? So when people in the Kriya Yoga apprenticeship program send me these 30 pages of questions about all the trivia of enlightenment issues that they've thought about and other people have said to them, you can cut it off at the root by saying, meditate on who wants to know all that. Because if you can meditate on who wants to know all the trivia, then you become enlightened about the self, what is really true, what is really eternal in the person. And so Mars, when it comes to improvement, will never be settled, will never be appeased until that most pristine truth or experience or knowledge or being is there. So that's one of the reasons why Mars, for anything, that's for enlightenment, when it comes to sports, when it comes to anything where competition is involved, a person with a strong Mars, they want to compete because they want to get better. They want to deepen their knowledge and deepen their understanding. That's why someone with a strong Mars should not go play sports with someone who's just leisurely out there to hit a ball for exercise.
Right. It's too frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, you tell a Mars person, we're not keeping score. And they're like, well, exercise is the side benefit.
Right. That's playing with too much of a Venus attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is interesting. One of the things that is very interesting to me is like watching things where you see somebody training for something. Okay, you know what? Your screen just got all blurry.
Yeah, let's see if I can fix it. Hold on. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Right. My first husband was a martial artist, and so he liked to watch these movies where the main character is a martial artist, right? And he ends up, kicking the butt of like 8 guys at one time or something, which used to make me laugh because it was so funny. But at the same time, it was really fun watching the character like train and get better and faster and better and faster, so much so that he would be like this highly honed, like a machine almost,
right,
so that he could handle any problem that came to him.
Exactly.
And he wouldn't go out seeking them.
Right.
Because, of course, he always had a high code, just like a good Mars does, right? Because Mars is noble. He has a high code of conduct. And so they would have a high code, but nevertheless would be able to handle anything, any kind of problem that came his way, including internal, because there'd always be an internal struggle, too, that went on.
Right.
Anyway, I just find that's one of the most fascinating and attractive things about Kshatriyas, about the warrior mentality.
Well, exactly. And that's where this idea of Mars getting bad press again comes into play, because it's just like, I've said this a million times, and people on my channel are probably tired of hearing me say it, but, with the idea of Mars, people see someone who's aggressive and who's kind of a bully,